Hello, welcome to the National Real Estate Post. Frank Ray here, obviously with our friend Barry Habib, who is mobile right now.
Yes,
He's very
sir.
busy. He's a very busy man. Okay, so he was kind enough to do the show with us from the car. Before we get started, a quick mention. I have to let everybody know that, with the Fannie and Freddie QM patch going away, you're not going to be able to do as many Fannie deals as you were able to do before, especially the higher LTV, higher DTI deals. That is happening right now. In fact, we're seeing that happen already. You guys are definitely going to be leaning more towards FHA and non-QM. FHA can certainly help in some situations, but non-QM is going to be there to help with the higher loan amounts, et cetera, in varying different situations. There is a great live training that's provided for your entire team on non-QM products and how to make use of those products through Oak Tree Funding. You simply register for it. They get a hold of you. They get your whole team on a webinar, and they go through the products and training exactly how they work. Totally awesome. To get started with Oak Tree, just click the banner you see on your screen that's over on your right, or look right down below. The banner's there, or there's a link around here on Facebook somewhere, and get started with the live training with Oak Tree Funding, non-QM. So with that, let's get to the show. Barry, I saw this Housing Wire article, and the title of it is Fed considers raising inflation target, which could lead to higher interest rates. And so I know this is going to be moving around out there. I figured we'd go to you, the guy who knows what all this means, and have you explain it. What does this mean?
So it's really interesting, brother, and it's good that you picked it up from our friends over at Housing Wire. They do a very good job. So first of all, the Fed's been doing quite a few things, haven't they? So let's think about this. Since July, they've cut rates 3 times. They don't really have that much in their storage tank that they can go with, but yet 3 times. So if we're supposed to be in that strong of an economy, why want to cut rates 3 times? And then here's the other thing that they're doing really under the wire, if you can call us under the wire on the down low. They've purchased $300 billion of treasury bills. So all of this has really been done to try and avoid recessionary fears. But in addition to that, they wanted to take the yield curve, which was inverted, and uninvert it. Now, by doing this, you're not really treating the cause, you're just kind of masking the symptoms. But I'm telling you that the Fed is doing a lot of things. And this last thing that you picked up was that they're considering increasing their inflation targets. What does that mean? So they have said that their inflation target is 2%. Now, to begin with, let's understand this. You can measure inflation one of 2 ways. You can look at CPI, Consumer Price Index, which is the smart thing to do because it takes into consideration out-of-pocket medical expenses and the cost of putting a roof over your head. I mean, duh, we need those things,
pretty
right?
important.
So pretty important. But now the Fed says, screw that. I don't want to listen to that. Nah, they don't know what they're talking about. Let's look at the PCE, or the personal consumption expenditure, which ignores out-of-pocket medical expenses. So it's baloney to begin with. But in addition to that, it puts much less emphasis on the cost of putting a roof over your head, which for some of us, we think that's a nice thing to have.
Yeah.
Now, if you were to go by CPI, CPI has been above the Fed's inflation target, which is 2% inflation forever, which means the Fed would have had to have not been cutting rates, hiking rates. But they use this bogus PCE. So under the guise of this baloney, they can say, oh, well, inflation's below our target of 2%. Now, knowing that, and knowing that it is possible with all this undercover QE that they're doing, that maybe the inflation target, the inflation rate starts to rise. And if that does, then they can't ignore if the PCE goes over 2%. Then they have to, supposedly, their mandate is they got to raise rates, right? So in order to not do that, then they'll say, well, maybe we'll change our inflation target. So they continuously move the goalposts. So what does this mean? Inflation is the arch enemy of bonds.
Right.
And if the Fed allows inflation to rise, and we're not there yet, okay? But if inflation were to rise to a higher level, what inflation does, Frank, is inflation erodes or it eats away at the fixed payment that you receive if you're a note holder. If you gave out a mortgage, or if you're listening to this and you were the one who gave out a mortgage, you receive fixed payments. Let's say you buy stuff that's on a list that you have and you buy the same stuff this month, next month, the month after. However, over time, you can't buy as much stuff or can't buy everything on your list because inflation means that things cost more. If inflation goes up, if the Fed says, hey, we'll have a higher inflation target before we do something like hike rates to curb inflation, and inflation starts to rise, that means the value of that asset that you're holding will be worth less. Now, you can't do anything about the mortgages you've given, but if you know inflation's higher, you'll have to start charging a higher rate on new mortgages that you'll do. This is why this is an important development if it happens, if the Fed's tolerance now moves up. And the Fed's doing all of these things, or considering doing all these things. Would you do these things if you were in a really strong economy? Evidently not. If you look at a lot of the manufacturing numbers, and then listen, just today, we got the Institute of Supply Management come out with their service sector, and the service sector numbers really came out showing that there's weakness there. There is continued weakness. It looks like what's happened to manufacturing is now infecting servicing, and this is how it happens. The unemployment rate starting to tick higher. I know that people say, hey, well, unemployment's low, the stock market's high, how could you have recession? That's the way you get into recessions, when these things kind of top out. I'm not saying this happened immediately, but to me, as you've been hearing from me say for a long time, I said sometime in 2020 looks to me like we're probably going to see a recession. So it's not this week, not this month, but sometime in 2020, I think that happens. And that means that interest rates would drop rather dramatically. And surprisingly, housing will hold up.
Does the fact that this article came out saying that the Feds are even considering this, does that cause a spike in rate? Does that cause fear and panic? Just, oh my gosh, they're thinking about it.
No, because first of all, they would have to A, go ahead and follow through and do it. And then B, what really would drive the market is the actual rate of inflation moving higher. So all this would mean, like, the Fed can't really do anything if inflation starts to go up, but try and curb it with a rate hike. But the Fed doesn't want to do a rate hike. They've been cutting rates. So even if inflation goes up, they don't want to say, oh, now we're mandated to hike rates. So they're trying to get away from that. If they could, they'd be cutting rates even further.
Okay, gotcha. Cool, man. Well, that's great, and that clears that up. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day and your drive there out in Florida, right? You're in Florida?
Yeah, it's pretty here. Yes, Tampa Bay right now.
Wow.
So it's pretty.
Yeah, good for you. It's raining cats and dogs out here in Northern California. So.
Oh man, well, I'm headed back to Jersey.
All right.
But yeah, the overall team, the housing market's really strong. Even if we get into a recessionary period, housing is always held up during recessions. Don't get confused with what happened last time. So we have a strong housing market, and rates are going to continuously be good. If they go up, they're not going to go up by much, but I still believe, as we've talked about many times, you have not seen the low in interest rates. That will happen during the next recession.
Wow.
When it happens, anybody's guess, I think 2020, maybe 2021 is likely.
Gotcha. Great. Well, Barry Habib, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Guys, do us a favor. Leave us your comments down below. Forward, share, and subscribe for free. And don't forget to sign up for that Oak Tree Funding live training on all of their non-QM products. You guys have a great one. Barry, thanks a lot. We'll catch you later.
Thank you, brother.
Bye, guys. Cool, brother. Thank you, man.